Hi, and welcome to the AtTheHive Podcast. I am your host, Dave Starcer. Today, we're lucky to have Ben Golliver in here. Is that how you say your last name, Ben?
You got it.
Ben Golliver from BlazersEdge here on the SB Nation NBA Network. Here to talk a little Portland Trail Blazers action. The Hornets are in Rip City tonight to take on Portland. Should be an intriguing matchup from a lot of different angles, actually. First thing I wanted to ask you about, though, Ben, I haven't got a chance to see Portland on TV much this year, but I did watch them on Thursday. Nice win against San Antonio. And I actually liked a lot of what I saw from Portland. Would you say that was that the Blazers' best performance on the year to this point, or what did you have to say about that game on Thursday?
Yeah, I mean, you definitely picked a good game to watch. I mean, it certainly was their best win. They only have 3 wins over plus 500 teams so far this season, so, they don't have a lot to choose from in terms of that best win category. But I think what they particularly liked was, how Damian Lillard stepped up in the second half when they were throwing a lot of different defenses at him. They were really trying to take the ball out of his hands. He made the right read. That's been a problem for them, kind of earlier in the season in terms of he's being able to figure out how defenses are playing him. He obviously is looking for his own shot a lot. The question was, can he find the open guys when guys are flashing to the ball, and can they get high percentage looks on the stretch? They were able to do that. And they were very happy with that win afterwards, especially because they played without Wesley Matthews. The platoon was obviously bothered by his back injury. So.
What is the official diagnosis on Wes Matthews? What's a matter with him?
He had this weird, he basically got knee in his hip, and he's obviously he's an Iron Man. So prior to this week, he hadn't missed a game in his NBA career, and he's very proud of that streak.
Over like 200 games, right, in a row?
250 games in a row, correct.
Wow.
So, he basically said after he got knee there, he tried to play through it. He stretched it out in a really uncomfortable way, and he basically fell straight to the floor. And after the game, he said he was even having trouble lifting his leg. Now, he's gone through various things in practice, not full practice, but he was trying to at least get some shots up, and they actually listed him as inactive for that Spurs game. So it's kind of a question as to whether he'll play on Sunday. I mean, personally, I'm not sure exactly why you rush it.
Yeah.
Especially considering where Portland is in the standings. It's not like there's huge implications to
Sure.
the game. They'll probably take it slow, but he's also, pushing to play. He's a very competitive guy, so I guess it's kind of a toss-up at this point.
Gotcha. Portland 10-12 on the year, so I mean you guys are right there. I mean you get stacked division. The Northwest is tough this year. Denver's in 4th place and they're at 500. Utah a game above. Did you kind of going into the season see Portland as the kind of bottom of that division, or did you have them sniffing out a playoff spot? I've heard a lot of different things with this Portland team. Obviously, that core of Lillard and Batum and Aldridge, it's pretty good. It's young, and obviously, like I said, Lillard's kind of showed all his detractors that this guy is ready to be a good NBA point guard. Do you see them kind of faltering, or where do you see them, I guess, finishing in the end when it's all said and done?
Well, I think right now, they're probably a little bit ahead of expectations. I think coming into the season, I projected, something around 30, 32 wins, right in that range. So, the fact that they're almost, just a little bit below 500, I think, you're probably a little bit ahead of schedule. I mean, their big issue, obviously, is the lack of depth. They really rely on their starters very heavily, all their starters basically are playing in high 30s in minutes, which is very unusual in the NBA. You don't see that a lot.
Unless you're Chicago.
As well.
You guys in Chicago, I mean, Tibbs loves playing those guys down to the wire as well. The bet for Portland, like you said, I don't say a lot of no names. Like you got guys like Jared Jeffries, he's an NBA vet. He's been around the league a little bit. Ronnie Price, Nolan Smith. What about some of these other guys? I saw Luke Babbitt. He had a good game against San Antonio, and he's the guy in college kind of had my eye on. Do you have like a favorite couple bench players maybe that most NBA fans, Hornet fans wouldn't know about?
I mean, it's hard to find an NBA player on Portland's bench long term. I'm not sure. Babby didn't get his option picked up. Smith didn't get his option picked up.
Oh, really?
Guys, I mean, it's basically a bunch of cast shots. They have Sasha Pavlovich, who was brought over in a trade just to make salaries work.
Forgot about him too.
Brought over.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, sorry. I'm not sure what's happening, but so Jared Jeffries was brought over in a trade to make salaries work. He's not really playing that much. Sasha plays quite a bit. But none of these guys are really going to be around long term. And this is obviously year one of a rebuilding program under UGM. And so they're looking, longer term. Can they find any of these guys who could stand out? At this point, no one's really stood out. Babbitt has huge confidence in issues, can't play defense, doesn't have a position.
Uh-huh.
So, they got issues there, but he can shoot the ball. So, I mean, that's sort of what they're hoping to see, is maybe he'll be able to, come out and be a Steve Novak type of player. Whether that happens or not, I think it's, still up in the air. They're definitely looking, longer term. I mean, none of these bench guys most likely are going to be back, in a meaningful capacity. They also brought over Joel Freeland and Victor Claver from, internationally. They were previously first-round draft picks. You look at Freeland, he's already been sent out of the D-League. He's shooting less than 30% from the field, so that's kind of been a little bit of a bust. I think they had higher expectations for him just because he's in his mid-20s. And then Claver, he was on the Spanish national team, and he's kind of a role player. He's pretty smart. He gets his hand a lot of balls defensively. He's able to shoot the ball a little bit, but he just hasn't shot great so far this season against NBA defenses. I think confidence is an issue there as well. So, I mean, they're really scrambling. I mean, it's not a surprise that they're really over-relying on their starters because their bench is probably able to get in the league. And I think if you look in terms of bench scoring, they're number 30 out of 30. So, I think that.
Well, that'll mean that the Hornet bench versus the Trailblazer bench should be an intriguing matchup. Two of the worst benches in the leagues going at it tonight in Portland. What are your thoughts, or your early thoughts anyways, on Terry Stotts? He was kind of a quote-unquote offensive coordinator, I guess, under Rick Carlisle. Him and Dwayne Casey, two guys who've had a couple chances, head coaching jobs, and were assistants there in Dallas, and now have their kind of third time around as NBA head coaches. And obviously, you're kind of seeing Casey kind of change things up there in Toronto. What are your thoughts so far, 20 games in on the Terry Stotts era in Portland?
I mean, he's struggling a lot of different balls. Obviously, you have a young team, so they've got to develop some of those players and give those guys, a chance. At the same time, they have a LaMarcus Aldridge to expect to be able to win now.
Yeah.
So you can't exactly go into full-on tank mode or full-on development mode with your youngest players right off the bat. So I think all in all, like I said, he's exceeded expectations. He's found ways to make players like Nicholas Batum and Wesley Matthews, maximize their ability on offense. At times that's kind of cost LaMarcus Aldridge some of his own offense. It moved him away from the hoop a little bit earlier to start the season, which is really screwing with his efficiency numbers and making him a far less effective player. But ultimately, Terry Stotts is going to be judged on how well Damian Lillard develops, and if he's able to get offense out of Nicholas Batum. So far, on those two counts, he's basically 2 for 2. But again, it's a long-term plan here. They're not thinking, we're going to be measuring Terry on wins and losses this season, as long as it's not completely ugly. They're more looking for, hey, are we able to get Lillard towards, sort of a fringe all-star level over the course of the next couple of seasons? Are they able to get Nicholas Batum to live up to his big dollar contract? And then, potentially, are they able to keep LaMarcus happy, or are they able to put him in a position where his trade value is maximized if they need to trade him sometime down the line? Those are sort of Terry Stotts' big, checklist items for this squad. I don't think that they're going to be complaining about how he's performed on any of those trades.
That's a tough checklist to have, though, the whole, LMA issue and whether Portland's going to keep him and roll with him as their franchise player here, or like you said, just try and trade him for maximum value. Do you have a position either way on Aldridge? I mean, he's a guy I've always liked. I mean, I feel like Portland fans like him. You can kind of squabble over whether or not he's overpaid or not, or if he's a number one guy. But, I mean, that's a tricky issue to have. Hornets fans kind of going through that with Eric Gordon. At least LaMarcus Aldridge is on the court. But, I don't know, I guess, where's your stance on him?
I mean, I think you look at his contract, he's one of the best values in the league. I'm not sure who would say he's going to be overpaid. I mean, he didn't get a full max deal. Basically at 10 or 11 a year, and for an all-star performer who's putting up the numbers he's putting up, I mean, I think that's great value. It's more of a question of whether, is Aldridge going to be able to stay around here long-term? Is he going to be able to stay happy? And I think, that's a tough question, because if he is happy and you're losing a lot, what does that say about him as a competitor? And that raises the question. If he's not happy, which, you would assume that he probably wouldn't be happy, if they're going to go through, a lengthy, stretch of lottery experiences, at that point, you're probably going to have to trade him. I think recent history in the NBA says players in his situation generally are going to get traded most likely this summer before the final year of their deal, which means he would be in Portland for this season and one more after that. I think, Blazers fans would understand if that's what it came to. I think they've appreciated so far that Aldridge hasn't tried to throw the team under the bus anyway. He's been very professional about it. He's been along for the ride. And people always want to see more from him because, like you said, he's not really a textbook number one option. He's probably better as a number two guy. But there is the possibility here over the next couple of seasons that, Damian Lillard becomes, that number one ball handling type guard who could get, close to 20 points a night and he can, sort of be a number one guy for you down the stretch. I mean, one problem with Aldridge is he doesn't shoot the free throws very well in the fourth quarter, and he's not necessarily always able to play super aggressively because I don't think he trusts his free throw shooting ability down the stretch. And so I think what you get from Lillard potentially is a guy who can get to the free throw line, shoot the ball, attack the basket in the fourth quarter to maybe take some of that pressure off of Aldridge. It's still early, but I think that's sort of their plan going forward. And I do think it's possible, considering that Lillard's so, old by rookie standards, he's 22. He's not that far away from what's going to be his prime years or his peak years in the NBA.
Mm-hmm.
It is possible you can kind of keep those two guys together, and maybe that would be your 1-2 punch. But it's all sort of on Aldridge's timeline. I mean, you realize he's already 27, clock's ticking. By the time it comes to the last year of his deal, he's going to be close to 30, and he's going to be feeling the pressure that, if he wants to make some real noise in the postseason, which you would assume he would want to, sort of like Chris Bosh did with the Raptors, he's going to look elsewhere because it's unlikely Portland's going to be able to surround him with enough talent to get it done that quickly.
Tricky situation. We're here with Ben Golliver of BlazersEdge here on the AtTheHive Podcast. Ask you a few more questions here, Ben, then I'll get you out of here. You bring up Lillard, and of course the big debate this year, has been him versus Anthony Davis for who's going to take that Rookie of the Year trophy award home. And obviously AD's been sidelined here for a couple weeks, just came back to action, coming off the bench right now for New Orleans. And Lillard, like you said, he's been great. Maybe had a couple down games, but I said on the whole, Lillard, in my opinion, would get my vote as of right now. Where do you stand on this whole debate? Or do you think it's a legitimate debate to have? Or obviously, we're not projecting these guys' careers 10, 15 years down the line, but I guess just for their rookie years, do you see Lillard taking it over AD this year?
Well, before the season started, I think Anthony Davis was my Rookie of the Year candidate. After the first quarter mark, I did take Lillard for basically the reasons that you mentioned. Davis just hasn't been on the court enough. He's been very productive when he's been on the court and super efficient, but that's kind of enough when you're comparing, kind of apples to oranges when you have half the game sample compared to a guy who's playing, more minutes and playing more games and starting every single game. So, from that standpoint, I think Lillard is pretty obvious first quarter Rookie of the Year choice. The question is, does Davis have enough time to make that up and can he, catch him? I think it's certainly possible. I mean, he's going to need to play a very high percentage of his remaining games to get there to do it. But you look at the type of numbers he's able to put together, the efficiency ratings he's going to be able to put together. One thing about Lillard is he started very strong with the shot, but he has shown a little bit of shakiness to it. It's very early in the season. He's playing so many minutes. I mean, everybody kind of realizes that rookie wall is coming. He's even hinted that, one of his biggest concerns for the season is, can he make it all the way through to the end? So to me, it seems like, he's racing out ahead in this race, so to speak. But I wouldn't be counting out Davis, unless he has another long-term injury, because I think there's a good chance that Lillard may fade a little bit as the second half of the season unfolds. Whereas Davis, theoretically isn't going to be as tired. He's not going to do quite as much. I mean, we know he's going to put up big numbers when he plays. That's what he's done for his entire life.
Especially playing those heavy minutes, like you said, if Portland's playing the starters, close to 40 minutes a night, you got to think that at some point those guys are going to hit that wall later here. As for tonight's game, I hope it's a good one. I think it should be a good one. Like I said, Davis back in the lineup. Hornets bringing in Dominic McGuire. I'm not sure if he'll be in uniform tonight, but he'll add a little depth to the wing position where the Hornets have kind of struggled a little bit. How do you see this one playing out tonight? Do you have kind of players to look out for on either side?
Well, it's going to be my first chance to see both Austin Rivers and Anthony Davis in person. I saw a little bit of Austin Rivers at Summer League, but he didn't play very much, as you know. So it'll be good to just kind of get first impressions of those guys, what they look like. And then that's sort of what I'm going to be looking for in this game. I'm not sure that, 2 months or 3 months from now we're going to look and care too much about who won this game, unfortunately. But, that's kind of how it happens. I think teams are looking at that kind of a cycle. But you're looking towards the future with a team that's going to have, both teams are going to have young guys going out there. One question from the Blazers standpoint is what's Batum look like? He said he kind of aggravated that back injury against the Spurs on Thursday. He hit a huge three down the stretch, so it was great that he played from Portland's standpoint. Is he limited? Do they limit his minutes? Is he able to play, 40 like he usually does? Is he able to play well? And that's going to be an issue for the Blazers. And then I guess, one issue I want to see is, what do they do with Davis' minutes as well? Because it sounds like they're trying to bring it back a little bit slowly. Is that what I'm seeing?
Yeah, I mean, he's coming off the bench now. He's playing roughly around 20-some minutes a night, 20 to 25 minutes a night. So they're bringing him around slowly. And Ryan Anderson's been playing great this season. They're at the 4 position, so they have depth. That's one. The front court's one area where the Hornets aren't struggling right now, finding contributions on a nightly basis. The back court, On the other hand, it's a bit of a different story, and that's why actually it's great that you brought up Rivers, because he had his breakout game the other night, 27 points against Minnesota in a loss. I guess on that note, were you an Austin Rivers skeptic, or do you see him as a point guard, shooting guard going forward in this league?
I mean, I think there's a place for it.
Yeah.
I don't know what I thought his ceiling was necessarily. I thought maybe he a little bit high for being a one-and-done guy. Maybe it would have been smarter for him to go back for a second year.
Sure.
I mean, he was a phenomenal talent compared to the rest of his high school class. I mean, he came out here for the Hoop Summit in Portland, and he did very well during the week of practices against some of the other guys in that class, which was a very quality class. So, I think that he's definitely got a place for the NBA. The fact that he's starting to get things going is good. It's a tough start to be that young, and it's really people expect a lot from you when you're the lottery pick. And if you're a one-and-done guy who maybe shouldn't have been the one-and-done guy, that can really get to you.
Mm-hmm.
Now all of a sudden it's a mental battle, as much as it is, adjusting to NBA caliber defenses and all those things. Because he was so much better than the level of competition in high school that sometimes that can build in bad habits. And he's not getting by necessarily on some of the things that some guards in high school are able to get by on, which is just like brute strength and size. Mm-hmm. And so that's going to be an adjustment process, of course. I think he's got a place. Like I said, I haven't seen him play in person yet, so I'm very interested to see what he looks like. Same thing with Davis. I've seen him play multiple times before, but never in the pros. So it'll be great to take a look. And I do hope that both get big minutes tonight. That's one thing I do hope, that they do ramp up Anthony Davis a little bit so we get a full long look at him.
Yeah, I agree with you on that one. Like you said, the Rivers thing, is he a point guard, is he a shooting guard? And just even 20 games in, those people, at least Hornets fans, already kind of questioning, is this guy a bust, or should we have taken someone else? I know Myers Leonard, who is your guys' other first round pick, was somebody who is high on the Hornets draft board as well. I heard, I don't know if it's true or not, but I heard that if Rivers was off the board, that New Orleans might have taken Myers Leonard with that 10th overall pick. How's Myers looking? Or obviously, I know he struggled on the defensive end, from what I've heard, at least according to the coaching staff up there. And is he starting to see his playing time ramped up? I should say. You think he's going to kind of stay in that 10-minute a night kind of thing, unless you're playing a really big team down low, or what's the deal with him?
Yeah, it's he's in an interesting spot because he's not really totally ready to play huge minutes, but obviously management, if they use the lottery pick on it, they want to see him playing a lot of minutes. Coaching staff trying to win games, obviously, maybe doesn't want to play him quite as much at this point as maybe management does. So I think there's a little bit of a disagreement in terms of what's the best way to utilize him and produce the best development longer term. But he looks okay. I mean, nothing special. So, one of the things that he came out saying that he can really do is shoot the ball from the mid-range, and we didn't see that at all early. He was very nervous, and again, adjusting to an NBA game, he just didn't trust his shot. Some of that's come on a little bit here in recent weeks, but so far most of his game has just been finishing how he's done, which you can't really complain about. He's very athletic and long, and you can throw lobs to him, and he's very good at catching them in weird positions and finishing them. But that's sort of the extent of his offensive game at this point. Defensively, he has a very hard time holding the block, very hard time, keeping people out of the paint. He gets into a lot of foul trouble, as you'd expect. It's sort of a long and, active big man who's young and doesn't really know how things work. And he tends to get, I think, a lot of attention from the referees because he's kind of an emotional player, and if he gets called for a foul, he kind of reacts to it a little bit. And I think that makes him a target of future fouls. He's kind of got to get that bad habit out of his system. But
the new Rashid in the making? No, I'm just joking. The new Rashid, Myers Leonard.
It's not that bad, yeah. But certainly, when you're, straight out of college, nobody knows who you are. You're the one who's expecting superstar calls. That could be tricky. So, but he's been fine. I think what you're going to see in terms of his playing time, you asked about, as the season develops and they get into say late January, earlier February. Especially if they start to go top a little bit record-wise, I think you're going to see him inserted into the starting lineup. They're just going to kind of play out down the stretch with him as sort of their, main sort of centerpiece center, because they really want to develop his feel with Damian Lillard. Long-term, that's clearly a huge emphasis for the team. And then, there's a big question mark as to, whether J.J. Hickson gets traded at the deadline, whether he signs somewhere else over the summer. I mean, his long-term future in Portland seems kind of questionable just because he's kind of great with LaMarcus Aldridge. And, you'd want to play your lottery guy, like I said. So to me, they're probably going to have an adjustment period here where they sort of ease Leonard into that starting role in the heavy minutes. But that could not. That could take place later in the season than I originally thought. My guess was he was probably going to take over after the first couple of months, but since they've been winning games, there's just no real reason to rush it.
That's true. But J.J. Hickson, I was going to ask about him. He's actually played pretty well this season. He's averaging a double-double, I think, and I think he's looked good. Like you said, he's probably not the best fit next to Aldridge, but do you think there's over 50% chance he gets traded here before the deadline this season, or do you think they maybe hold on to him just for this year?
I think it can go either way. Don't get fooled by J.J. Hickson's numbers. He's the classic kind of guy who gives you 2 points and then gives it back on the other end.
Sure, yeah.
His advanced numbers, his plus minus and all that stuff. It wasn't too long ago this guy was barely an NBA player. He was waived, kind of outright waived by the Sacramento Kings last year. That tells you something because you all know about how bad the Kings are.
Yeah.
So, let's not overhype him. He's in a great position where he can actually put up huge numbers, though, because Portland just doesn't have that interior forward. He's got so many opportunities to rebound. And then the way they've been using Aldridge, which is away from the hoop, basically JJ's almost like a one-man rebounding machine. So it's like if he doesn't get the rebound, nobody does. So it's a great situation for him personally. And he's very good at, getting garbage buckets in the key, putbacks, diving to the basket and finishing around the hoop. That's sort of what his bread and butter is, and he's got an opportunity to do that because Portland has a wide-open offensive style under Coach Terry Stotts. So it's a good place for him to be. I don't think he's ever going to be putting up these numbers on a good team. And I think if you're looking at like a playoff caliber team, I think he's at best like your 3rd or 4th big man. And Portland obviously is playing him as a number 2 big man. So I think he's a little bit. I think it's a little bit of fool's gold is what I'm trying to get at.
Gotcha.
I think if they trade him, it's not going to be a huge deal. They're not going to be like, oh man, we really miss J.J. Hickson because his influence on wins and losses just isn't that big. Although he had a great game down the stretch as well against San Antonio, and he actually got credited for being one of the factors for winning that game. But I think there's a lot of nights where he's doing just as much harm as good. But next summer it comes a big question: are they going to pay for him? And Stats are going to demand a little bit more money than if they did last year. And I'm not sure Portland's going to have a ton of interest in bringing him back at a big contract number.
All right, last couple questions here. I know you said in the grand scheme of things, tonight's game probably doesn't have a ton of meaning, but it is that first matchup, Lillard's team versus Anthony Davis's team. You got Aldridge and Davis, Rivers, Vasquez versus Lillard, I think could be a good matchup. Do you have a prediction or a matchup you're looking out for?
Yeah, like I said, I'm just looking to see your rookie face for the first time. I don't really make
as is everyone.
But Portland's played well. They're coming up Thursday. The big key for Portland is they've kind of played up and down in their competition recently.
Sure.
They've got themselves in some huge holes against teams that have records similar to New Orleans. They got down big. I believe when they got down big to Charlotte, they had to have these huge second half comebacks and win in overtime. And then they lost one to the Kings recently, which you never want to see that at home. And then they beat the Spurs. So it's a team that's very hard to predict which team you're going to get on a night-in, night-out basis. Assuming that they handle things, they should be able to take care of business at home, especially against a team like New Orleans. But I wouldn't put any of my own money on it. Let's put it that way.
Sounds good. Ben Golliver here from BlazersEdge. Thanks for coming on and talking with me, man. Also, you're writing over at SI.com now, is that right?
That is right.
How's that going for you?
Oh, it's great. Yeah, just NBA.SI.com if people want to check it out. We try to post, 5, 6, 7, 8 posts a day. So, if people want to see it, they can definitely take a look there. And actually, you mentioned Dominic McGuire. We just wrote about that today. So, there's always something for people who want to check it out.
NBA Junkies, it's a place to go right there. Point forward on SI.com with Ben Golliver and also over at Blazers Edge here on SB Nation. Ben, thanks again for talking to me, and hopefully we'll have you on here again here as the season goes on.
That sounds good. All right, take care, man.
You two have a good one. Again, that was Ben Golliver of BlazersEdge joining us here on the AtTheHive Podcast. For everyone, I'm David Starcer. Thanks for listening, and tune in again next time. Hornets and Blazers tonight up in Portland, and we'll look forward to hearing from you guys again soon.